Essentially, the Trump administration's narrative starts with the opioid crisis in the United States, which kills tens of thousands of Americans each year. They blame that on a number of cartels, including Tren de Aragua, or TDA, this Venezuelan criminal organization, and they say the Venezuelan government and Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro himself are directly in charge of TDA and personally telling them to target the United States, not only with drugs, but with illegal immigration, which they refer to as an invasion. This is the whole basis for the US declaring TDA and other gangs and cartels terrorist organizations and invoking the Alien Enemies Act against TDA in March, 2 months after he took office. And this whole chain here is the basis for the military deployment to the Caribbean and the strikes we've been talking about. The problem is, all of this completely falls apart under scrutiny. So let's start with the opioid crisis, which is estimated to have killed over 700,000 Americans since 1999. For the most part, this crisis can be traced back to pharmaceutical companies at best misleading doctors about the addiction risks of their drugs and at worst bribing them to overprescribe opioid painkillers. These are companies like Purdue Pharma who pled guilty for their role in the crisis, as well as other companies like Johnson & Johnson, Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, who collectively paid billions in nationwide settlements, but also consulting companies like McKinsey, who settled and admitted wrongdoing for their work with Purdue Pharma to help supercharge their sales. They were also helped by lawyers like Rudy Giuliani, who managed to get them a deal where they could continue selling Oxy after they were already convicted and the dangers of Oxy were already largely documented. And once those prescriptions ran out, those patients turned to illegal drugs like heroin and, yes, fentanyl. Now, the problem for the Trump administration is there is zero fentanyl coming from Venezuela. Not from TDA, not from anyone else in Venezuela. That's not just me saying it, it's even Republicans like Senator Rand Paul.
There is no fentanyl made in Venezuela. Not just a little bit, there's none being made in Venezuela.
The chemicals used to make fentanyl come from China, and production is done overwhelmingly by the Sinaloa cartel or Jalisco New Generation in Mexico. And these do not tie back to TDA. In fact, even without counting fentanyl, the Trump administration's claim that TDA is bringing in large amounts of drugs into the US, there's no evidence of that. But that doesn't matter, because we've been looking at all of this backwards. What matters is if they can stretch the definition of narcoterrorism enough to include drug smuggling, which it doesn't, and if they can paint TDA as a cartel, which it's not, and if they can claim the Venezuelan government and Nicolas Maduro himself are personally in charge of TDA, which there's no evidence of that, then they can accuse Venezuela of being a state sponsor of terror.
State sponsor of terror.
State sponsor of... Holy fuck!